All right, back with the badness. All right, hey everybody. Similar format for this next one. I'm going to screen share. So let's talk about the objectives for this one. So here's my lesson plan. By the end of this lesson, I hope that each and every one of you will be able to write unit tests in Mocha. So the way that I'm going to check your understanding on that is that I'm going to give you some code and then expect you to add tests to it. And there's two different kinds of assertions I want to make sure that you can do, equivalency and deep equivalency. I'm going to start by providing you some code and having you run it. Then I'm going to show you how to add Mocha to it, and you're going to follow along with me. And then I'm going to provide you with some examples and then just let you add tests and play with it a little bit. And there's a little like gotcha gimmick that I'm going to throw in there also. And then we're going to do our check for understanding. So that's the game plan. But one of the things about checking for understanding a lot is that the lesson could take all kinds of different directions. So I'm looking forward to seeing where we go. So I was planning on having this code ready ahead of time, but I didn't. So you're gonna have to follow along with me and write it out. So make sure you have a new folder ready. Wipe. I'm gonna call this one Mocha Teach and Practice. All right, so empty folder, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. I'm going to make an app.js file. You should do the same. And then in that app.js file, we're going to make a function called sum. And it's going to take in two parameters. And it's going to return the first number plus the second number. That's it. Get this far. Cool. If I wanted to run this code, how would I do it? Think to yourself. This is like the lightest possible Node lesson we could have. How would I run this code? I'm gonna call on someone. Ben Dunn, give me an idea of how I can run this.
You need to call it.
Yep. So
Great.
Like right below it?
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Sum, you can pick two numbers.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I believe it's node, the file name.
Correct. So yeah, if I do node app.js, oop, what happened?
Shouldn't have trusted me.
Log it. You have to log it.
Gotta log it. It did all of those things. It just didn't output it to the screen. So I could do maybe something like this. And now, if I run that, I see the output. Questions so far? Cool. Nothing too terribly special about this. The thing that's kind of irritating is like that if I want to see how the code works, I have to print the output. That feels very sloppy to me. Those of you who saw my like live coding Python thing a little while back, I'd never written any Python. I don't know Python's testing frameworks or whatever. This is exactly what I did. when I was writing those functions, I would do something like it can sum 1 and 2. And then I did something like and so if I run that, that's a test. That's all this is a sexier way of doing that. Questions about this so far? All right. Last node thing, and then I promise it's Mocha from here on out. To make this testable, it needs to be a module. So I'll just type module.exports equals sum, like that. Curly braces and everything. And we can get rid of this. All right, so if I'm going back to my lesson plan, I've provided you some code. You have run some code. I actually don't know that you've run some code. I told you to, and hopefully if you were having trouble with it, you spoke up, but that's a risk that I'm running with this. And if one of you is like, oh shit, I didn't know he was gonna actually expect us to do this stuff, I'm gonna find out once I start having you send me the files. So that's what happens when somebody's like, oh, yeah, actually, could you go back to your first file real quick? All right, so we've gotten this far. Let's talk about how we get Mocha going. I want you to npm init-y. What this is going to do is give us a package.json file. That's it. So when I run that, that's what I see. Next, we want to install Mocha. So we're going to npm install Mocha. Follow along. Once you've done that, we're going to make a folder called test, singular. By default, Mocha looks for all of your tests in a folder called test. Jest looks for them by default in a folder called tests, plural. Every tool is a little bit different. They're also configurable. You could call it something else, but singular test is what Mocha is going to expect it to be called. Next, we are going to make a file in that folder, and we're going to call it app.spec.js, like that. So to recap, npm init-y, npm install Mocha, mcdir test, touch test app.spec.js. So we'll have some hunch that this worked out okay if we can npx Mocha. If you see something like that, you got it set up correctly. All right, who's not seeing that? Actually, here's a better way to assess this. This is a great use of thumb meters. Give me a thumbs up if this is all working. So that JR's good, Jack's good, Tiffany's good, Ben's good. Jack Sanders is kind of iffy. Talk to me.
I made my folder Mocha, and then so apparently it doesn't like that I've made my folder Mocha.
Correct.
So I'm trying to rename that now. So now I'm just backtracking. But
There you
if
go.
the setup is just like Jess, then I'll manage.
Yeah, so a pro tip, when you do that npm init-y, it names your project whatever the name of your folder is. And so if you try to install Mocha and you named it Mocha, it's gonna go, I can't install myself into myself, dummy. It's pretty rude, the node frame. I'm kidding. William, how you doing? Got it. Excellent. All right. So let's write our first test. So we can go into that app spec.js file. And if you write, so first thing we need to do is we need to import the thing that we're testing. That's step one. So we're going to bring in, what do we call this? Sum. We want to bring in sum from app. Your screen should look like mine. I might be wrong about this. I think at this point, we can do the same thing we were doing in that other file. We could do something like console.log, it adds 2 and 3. Something like that. If I run that, npx Mocha, there we go. Nothing special yet. So let's see if we can do that a little bit more elegantly. What if I do test, it adds 2 and 3, and then I pass it an anonymous function. And I'm going to pull in one more thing. This is called an assertion. Node has one built in by default. It's called assert. Notice that one, I didn't put the curly braces on it. I'm not destructuring anything out of it. And also, it doesn't have any dots or anything in front of it. It's just a regular, it's built in, so we didn't have to install it either. I can now say assert dot equal, might be equals plural. We'll find out in a sec. Sum 2, 3, comma 5. If I run that, oh shoot, test isn't in Mocha. All right, well let me do it. Oops. There we go. Psych, take it back. It needs to be called it. I could have sworn Mocha had one just called test. So you should be able to do this and run npx Mocha and see what I saw. Which was that.
Kyle, for some reason,
Mhm.
it's running correctly, but equal is crossed out in VS Code for me.
Really? But it is running?
Mm-hmm.
Me
All right,
too.
don't lose any sleep about it just yet.
Hovering over it says it's deprecated.
Ah, there you go.
Use strict equal as a function instead.
I actually wouldn't recommend that you use the assert built-in assert library for anything outside of this lesson. So I would lose too much sleep over it either way. Cool. Questions about this?
Does it always need to have an anonymous function in front of it?
Yep. It could be declared, but like, so I call this like the add 2 and 3 test and put that in there and say the add 2 and 3 test. That works the exact same way. But testing code is not like application code. It follows some different rules. You actually want to repeat yourself a lot more. You want to be a lot more verbose. There are like certain kinds of code tricks that you might not do in production code that you would absolutely do in testing code. So I'd recommend you inline it all. Cool. Other questions? All right, so I want you to write some more tests for this. I want you to think about what you might be able to do to break this, because there is something. Play with different combinations of things. Just get used to writing some tests. And bonus points if any of you can figure out how to break it. Go. Just play for, let's say, 3 minutes or so. Go.
Kyle, can I see your package.json
Yeah.
just for a second while we're waiting? Oh, okay. So you didn't change the test keyword.
Nope. If I wanted to, it's just that. And now you can npm test instead of npx Mocha.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to run.
There are 45 seconds or so. Think about boundaries. What kinds of numbers are different from each other? 2 and 3 aren't really different kinds of numbers, but there are numbers that are different. Okay, so since I want to do some live assessment and use that to drive the lesson, if you could copy and paste, actually, let's make a new room for this. We're gonna do another everybody writes. I am going to leave this room and I'm gonna go to a room called Mocha. If you would be so kind as to join me in here and copy paste your the test that you wrote, just the contents of that spec file. All right, so now I'm checking to see if we have everyone. I see Ben and Jack. I don't know which Jack it is, but one of them. See Will, see other Jack. I see Junior, Tiffany. All right, cool. So looking through these, syntax looks all right to me. So Ben, did this pass?
No.
Cool, why not? What came back instead?
2 and 3 concatenated.
Yeah.
Which
So, so that's one way that we could figure out that this breaks. Say like it adds the strings 2 and 3. So if I run that, womp womp, we got 23 back. Any guesses what I could do to make that pass?
change the condition to win.
I
That's what I did.
mean, just do that.
It works.
What else?
You could change whatever first number and second number in the function definition to an integer. So
Sure.
make it be an integer.
So I could do it the lame way and do parse int like that. Or I could do it the dope way and just put a plus in front of it. Does it work? Holy smokes, the tests are saving my bacon.
What was that witchcraft?
This is literally a hack. If you put a plus in front of something that might be a string like this, it'll try to coerce it into a number. Does the same thing as parse int. Other questions? Another one you could have done? Actually, I'm going to show you this one, and I'm actually feeling pretty good about, like, just based on the things that I'm seeing, your ability to write these Mocha tests, which again was our objective. So I'm looking at my check for understanding here. Add tests to existing code. I do want to make sure that I get to deep equivalency, because that's like one of the first things that's going to trip you up once you start trying to use this out in the wild. But I'm going to give you one more thing that I want you to test, and then I want you to send me the code for it. I want you to add 0.1 and 0.2. Write a test that tries to add 0.1 and 0.2. Tell me what happens.
It doesn't round? Question mark?
Yeah, what's going on there, man?
I don't know. That ain't the number it expected, though.
I know. So, all right, two things I want you to try. First thing is I want you to make in the everybody writes room, put your test for that 0.1 plus 0.2. And then separately, I want you to take like a minute or two and see if you can fix it so that it does pass. I'll give you a hint. Decimals are super weird in JavaScript. Actually, in like most languages, it's also the case in Python and Ruby and lots of stuff. So it needed to like not be a decimal, at least in the calculation part. But first, let's take a look at your, make sure you update your everybody writes with your test. Very nice, Will. Very nice, JR. Very nice, Jack. Very nice, Ben. So teacher brain, I'm going to make a note of this for once we're through this because I want to talk about this. Cool, another minute, see if you can come up with a solution. Cool, anybody figure it out? All right, so teacher brain. The only reason I gave you that one is to like keep you interested in this. I don't actually care if you can figure it out, but I thought it might help you stay interested in the testing part. So I'll give you the answer. So the reason it does that is because there are no decimals in binary. Like ultimately, these all just get reduced down to like integers, right? So since we can have an infinite number of decimals, well, we can't really represent an infinite number of decimals in binary or something, right? So we use a thing called floating point math. Floating point math has varying levels of precision that it uses for kind of fake representing decimals. And there's a couple gotchas with it. And basically, you can't represent this calculation very accurately using floating point math. And so that's why you end up with that monstrosity. That's a binary computer trying to do decimal math. So the hack for that is to make it not decimals anymore. So you could do something like whatever this is times 100, whatever that is times 100, and then take the entire thing and then divide it by 100. Let's see if that does it. I see fields of green, red roses too. Tiffany, what's up?
I figured out a way to make it pass
Nice.
by changing the function return statement.
Mhm.
And I wrapped first number plus second number
Mhm.
in parentheses and did to fixed
Mm.
and passed to as the decimal points that I wanted.
So to fixed is kind of interesting. To
I
fixed
also
does
used
something
it.
slightly different though. Anybody know?
I've been thinking about this since I saw you go to the function to change it instead of to do it to the test.
Yeah.
Is it like mutating whatever value you have?
So let's
I understand why what I did is wrong after thinking about it for a little bit.
So what if I did, let me take out all my clever stuff. So if I did that instead, and I do something like to fixed, maybe something like that. Okay, interesting. I'm kind of curious, what does to fixed do? I'm sort of surprised it passed, but check out that return value.
It's a string, not
It's
a
a string, not a number. I have a hunch that if it doesn't need to have leading or trailing zeros or anything like that, it might coerce it to a number anyway. Or, oh, it might also be because I'm doing equal, not strict equal. And it's able to coerce it in the test. Let's see if what that does. Yeah, there you go.
Is that the difference between like if you're in jest, you can do like 2b,
Yep.
and then you could be like 2 equal. Okay, cool.
Well, slightly. There's one other thing that I want to talk about before we move on to the next one. That'll
Okay.
scratch
Is that
it.
is that a deep equality?
2b and 2 equal are regular equality and deep equality.
Okay.
This
cool.
is actually like a JavaScript issue. The
Okay.
problem, and this is probably the reason why assert.equal is deprecated, is it got back the string and then the test coerced it to the right value. Uh-oh. Which brings me to the other thing that I saw Ben do when we were looking in the Everybody Writes, where he was changing the value in the test. And so why is that a problem? Who can tell?
It's basically fraudulent. Like
Yes.
I'm telling it to give me what I want. I might as well just
Exactly.
change the outcome.
So like the abstract principle we want to take away from that is we want to have as little logic as possible in our tests. We want all the logic to be in the application. And so if you find yourself replicating application logic in your tests, you're probably not doing it right. Other questions? All right. Let's do another function. This one, we're going to do a map. So this is going to we're going to call it increment age. Follow along with me. And it's going to take in an array of people objects. And it's going to map over them. And it's going to take that person's age and add 1 to it, and then return the person. That's it. To get this out of this file, we just need to do that. To get it into the spec file, we just need to do that. I want you to try to write a test case for this. Now, there's one gotcha on this. Objects aren't compared by value. If you have 2 arrays or 2 objects and they have the same shit in them, if you try to assert equal, even if you try to assert strict equal, it's going to ask, do you mean, are they literally the same object? Or do they just have the same values? Are they in the same place inside the computer? Or do they just happen to be the same thing? So you'll fail every time on that. So what you want to use instead is assert.deep equal for that. But see if you can come up with a couple of test cases for increment age. Let's take 3 minutes on that. Go. 20 seconds. All right. So write any tests or any parts of tests that you wrote, throw them in the everybody writes room. Let me see what we got. All right, so teacher brain. I'm seeing some answers that make me think that we need a little bit more time. So let's take another minute or two on this. Keep working on it. Think about what increment age is expecting as an argument. See if you can come up with some representative examples of that. So like teacher brain, I'm looking at some of the things that are getting passed in. I go, that's not the right data type. That's not the right data type. So really think about what operation is actually happening here, what those data types need to be, and what kind of representative example could you make to test it. Think about the things that are going to be on that. Keep working. All right, update the everybody writes with your best effort. Let's take a look at it. Cool. This is a good example. Ooh, I like this. Putting these examples outside here, making the array, passing in the people. That isn't quite what we would expect to come back though. And also the reason that the Mocha isn't running is it's not deep dot equal, it's deep capital E equal, no dot. This one's good. All right, so teacher brain, I'm trying to figure out, all right, we got a gap here. Hold on, my 5-year-old is like full scale melting down right now. All right, so now I'm thinking like, all right, what if I give you an example to prompt with? Can you come up with more? So maybe I go, all right, so it can increment ages on an array of people. So if I say that the people are, come up with the simplest example I can. One person, the only property on there is age. And the reason I want to make this as simple as possible, that's the only thing that's actually in the implementation. I'm mapping, it's like the presence of a map here means that people has to be an array. That's some deductive reasoning there. It's the only thing you can map over. All right. So for each thing in there, I'm going to be calling on this .age property. So at a minimum, it needs to be an object because I'm accessing a property on it. And that property needs to be age, and that age needs to be a number because I'm doing a math operation on it. That's actually all that this implementation assumes about this. So cool. That's enough to test with. So I should be able to assert.deep equal increment age people. And I would expect the example to be this with age. So I could say like, I can also make that a variable. I'd call it like transformed people or aged people maybe. Maybe something like that. So if I run that, aged plural. Oh, it's still mad about my 1 and 2 because I changed the implementation. All right, there we go. Fields of green. Take a look at that example. That's what I start with. That's what I end with. When I pass the first one to the second one, it works. So the next test might be something like, cool, can you do it with more than one person? Give that a shot. Wrestle with it a little bit. Update your everybody writes thing as necessary. It's like a couple more minutes. Go.
Kyle, I'm still getting the same error. It's not a problem with my test. It's saying that type error cannot destructive property sum of require ellipsis default as it is undefined. I think I've got everything looking the same that you do, but I can't figure out why it wouldn't be working.
Cool. So while everybody else is working, I want to take a look at what Jack's got going on. So Jack, why don't you screen share?
Okay, give me 1 second.
Okay. Cannot destructure property sum. So, all right. Why don't you take out that dot default on line 1? Okay. So we're pulling in increment age. Increment age is a function in that file. Increment age is being exported. It looks like it's spelled right. I think you're spelling it right on line 15. People is in scope. All right, let me see what happens when you try to run Mocha now. You make your terminal a little bigger.
Yeah. So
Cool.
yes.
Now it's telling you exactly what the problem is.
Okay, so
Don't look at that part. Look at the rest of it. It is running.
oh, it's running. It's running. Sorry, I was still reading this as if I had done something wrong. Okay.
Yep. It is showing you a diff between what you have and what it's expecting.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, well, I guess I'll just fix it here then.
How come I've never tried to run a testing framework without getting just this like block of deprecated? Like, why are they all deprecated?
Jack Sanders, why don't you screen share and let's take a look.
Oh no, I don't. Mine is working,
Mhm.
but I'm just saying, like, when I run jest too, like, it all says deprecated as well.
So like some of this is when you, what a testing framework is something that throws errors. If it doesn't throw errors, that means that line of code passed. If it does throw an error, it means it didn't pass. Additionally, it threw an error. And so depending on how you run the code, it tells you different levels of information about that error. For example, if you npx Mocha, it probably will give you that like, this script crashed kind of output because it did crash. You had a test that didn't pass. That means an error was thrown. If you do with npm test, it'll probably swallow that part of it, but that's why you tend to see that kind of thing. Okay, another minute or so. Make sure you're getting those examples updated. JR, think real careful about those data types. You're partway there. Tiffany, I like it. And I think Will bounced.
Can I ask a question about the
Please
build?
do.
So, where was my note for this? When I was writing, maybe it's different for tests. So when I was writing the function yesterday, I was told not to compare objects to objects or arrays to arrays, complex data types to each other, but try to only compare primitive data types with one another.
So that's equals versus deep equals.
Okay.
With regular equals, you can only compare primitives. Deep equals is for if you want to say this object should look like this object. And Jack Sanders, this is the difference between to be and to equal in jest. To equal is mostly for primitive values. To be is deep equality. Or sorry, no, other way around. To be is, I want this to be the actual same thing as this. To equal is, I want these to have the same values.
Oh, okay. I thought it defaulted to deep equality for some reason. Okay.
Different assertions for those. All right, pencils down. Make sure that your everybody writes room is updated. And let's see what we got. So Jack Sanders has a good one. It is an array of objects. Jack, you got any more?
I'm putting it back in now. It's
Thank
still not
you.
going to work though.
Sorry, yeah, I'm almost there. I'm putting in the people object.
Thank you. Junior, this looks beautiful. Does it pass? Excellent. So teacher brain, like Junior gets it. Feel good about that. Tiffany, does it pass? Cool. I feel good about Tiffany. Jack Sanders has a good example. Jack, did you say you had any more?
I'm just converting the test to throw in objects right now as like people and then
Gotcha.
aged people.
All right. Well, Jack had a good working example last time, so I feel pretty good about that. Jack H. Let's take a look. I don't know why it keeps scrolling me.
I saw what I think maybe Junior did, and I'm trying to replicate it as quickly as possible.
Cool. So on line 13 there, I'm going to take a beef with that. Can you guess why?
Because that's not how you do it.
It's not how you do it. Why?
I don't know. I'm still working my way through that.
Cool. Can anybody help Jack H on why that's a bad idea?
Well, isn't increment H doing just that?
Yes.
And so then if you do this, isn't it hard coding it essentially in your test?
All correct. There's a specific like vocabulary-ish kind of thing that I want to hear for this. We are replicating the logic. We don't want to put application logic in the test. We want as little logic as possible. Saving something in a variable, that helps the test be more readable. As soon as we're actually doing the operations in there, now we're recreating logic. That's probably right on the wrong side of that boundary, but like that hopefully gives you a flavor of like why that's dangerous. So Jack, why shouldn't you do that? Jack H.
Well, you're not supposed to put application logic in your tests.
Cool.
I guess what I was trying to do is I was trying to make a new object as fast as possible that I would have something to compare to. And one, I failed. Two, I didn't know how to do it, so I wasn't doing it properly.
Awesome. Cool. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. So like in teacher brain, like I maybe make a mental note that me and Jack H got to touch base maybe tomorrow, day after, and I throw one of these over to him and see how well that's stuck. Everybody else, I'm feeling all right about. So before we move on to our last topic of the day, any other questions about writing unit tests?
In the spec file, I feel like I remember seeing huge test files, but are like const people, const h people, can that be taken out, put
Yep.
somewhere else, and then you can call that in?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to show you two more things that you can do with this that'll make this better. So I'm testing two different things in this file, right? I'm testing the sum function and I'm testing this increment age function. I don't know about that, boo-boo. That makes it really hard to see where one thing that I'm testing starts and the other one begins. So we can wrap these in describes. So just like it, same thing, takes in a string and a function. And I could say something like sum, and then just put all of my sum tests in there. And now when I run my tests, now it groups them. Hey, that's pretty sexy. And the way that you remember this is describe sum. Well, it can do this, it can do this, it can do this. It's supposed to sound like natural English. Describe increment age. Well, it can increment ages on an array of people. It's not the greatest test name I've ever written, but cool. Now I've got these things grouped together. Other than that, describes don't actually do anything. You can nest describes as far down as you want to go. So you could say, I want to describe sum. I want to describe sum with numbers. I want to describe sum with strings. So you can just create arbitrary groupings of these things with describes. Now, there's one other thing that we can do with describes that's pretty cool. If we happen to have a function inside of this describe called before each, well, I'll put it this way. We happen to have a function called before each in here. And if we invoke it and give it a function, that will run before each test. And so we can use that to make something available or put something in the environment or reset something or do whatever. So this actually gets a little bit funky with things like making those available, because you could do something like this dot people, this dot aged people, and then use those in your assertion. That's actually not going to work because of how fat arrows handle this. So it actually needs to be a declared function. I don't know. That's advanced stuff. I don't care if you can do that right away. But Tiffany, I think that's what you're referring to.
Yes. Also curious about expect.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mentioned at the beginning of this that I actually don't recommend that you use the assert module.
Mm-hmm.
What most people use for Mocha is a library called Chai. Chai is just a bunch of really expressive ways to do these kinds of tests. So if I npm install Chai, and then instead of requiring assert, if I require Chai and then bring in Chai's expect function, then these turn into something like expect that to equal 5. And so it reads a lot more like English. You can also do some more complex comparisons, like should be greater than 4 or greater than or equal to 5, or it's the object should have this property or it should not have this property. And so you can write those things a lot more like English sentences. And like Chai has dozens and dozens of tools like that.
Is that your favorite library for testing?
Honestly, Jest is.
Cool.
So Jest is like Mocha and Chai and all of the plugins that people actually use with Mocha and Chai, and everything's just all set up and configured for you. And so like if we were doing this in Jest, the describe and it stuff would be exactly the same. Expect would also already be there. We wouldn't need to pull it in from Chai. And Chai has this entire grammar to it that's really difficult to learn. And so they've simplified it a lot, and they just give you functions like that you don't have to figure out the kind of cryptic dot like grammar system for how Chai assertions work. Other questions about this? Cool. I still want to do this factory method one. Let's take a break. Jack H, if you got to bounce to stand down or something, like no harm, no foul. I think the factory method one will go a little bit quicker. So hopefully we can get through it. 5 minutes.